My name is Jessica Lipke, and this is my project presentation. So, for the introduction, the interview assignment that I chose was the interview. My research topic is examining the impact of popular media, specifically true crime documentaries, fictional shows, and movies, and how they shape audiences' perceptions of antisocial personality disorder and or conduct disorder compared to clinical criteria from the DSM-5. And so my topic seeks to address misconceptions and knowledge gaps about these two disorders and to look at the role of media perceptions, stereotypes, and stigma. The significance of the research: it has the potential to address how media influences understanding of mental health as a whole, and if stigma can change, mental health services may be more accessible to all people. And then the rationale for choosing this assignment, compared to my survey, this is much more open-ended, so I felt it had richer data and had the capacity to be researched on a broader scale. So when writing a primary question, the process was, for the first article assignment we had, I originally was looking to do the article assignment on this topic, and I couldn't find a lot of research. There was a big gap in recent research for these disorders specifically. And then I've also done similar research in previous classes, in 2017 to 2018. And during that project and research, we were expected to back up our findings with media representation, and I found that a lot of it was incorrect based on the DSM criteria. And so the research question is similar to the objectives. How does popular media, such as true crime documentaries, fictional shows, and movies, affect the audience's perception of antisocial personality disorder and or conduct disorder, and how does it compare to clinical diagnostic descriptions and criteria? So developing the data collection instrument, I did a semi-structured interview, and it had 6 sections. So having it sorted into the 6 sections for me was equally helpful for the theme and as well as coding, but also to get richer data based on the order of my questions. So the first section was background in media exposure, which was to understand the participants' media habits and educational background, if any. I kind of use this as a pre-survey too, where if they didn't have any experience in this genre of media, then I could end the interview there and then find another participant, but that did not happen. The next section is perceptions based on media representation, and that's to look at the initial impressions and reactions to the media portrayal of the disorders. And then the third section was the impact on attitudes and beliefs. So we're looking at how media shapes the stigma and assumptions or beliefs. And then we compared it with the clinical data. So I had the full diagnostics criteria for the 2 disorders, read them to them, and then asked follow-up questions based on the new information that they may or may not have known. And then next section was looking at accuracy, responsibility, and representation, and that looks at participants' view on media accuracy and any ethical responsibilities that they felt media has when talking about these disorders. And then I had an optional reflection at the end. I used open-ended questions and then also had follow-up questions based on the conversations I had with the participants. And like I said, I used the comparison to the DSM-5. So that was a clinical reference that I was using in the survey. So the data collection process, I recruited participants by a social media posting, since my participation requirement was not a specific group other than those who watch those related media. I also ensured that those participating were not included in my survey project, just to make sure there was no overlapping data. I collected the informed consents, and then I conducted the interviews in person and virtual. When it came to the transcription and coding, I manually transcribed and coded my data just because it was hard to find a free transcription or coding service that I didn't have to download something on my computer or pay for a membership. And it did take more time, but it also allowed me to familiarize myself with the responses a little bit more than just inputting it into a system would have. And then the data analysis process. So the manual coding procedure I did was transcribing it. So I read the transcriptions and listened to the recordings to familiarize myself. And then I coded. I used initial codes that I developed based on recurring concepts like stereotypes, misunderstandings of the disorder, prevalence, overestimation in media, sensationalization. And then I took those codes and grouped them into overarching themes to identify patterns across the participants. So most of the key findings reinforced the objectives by showing discrepancies in media portrayal and clinical understanding. A lot of the participants interpreted antisocial personality disorder literally, meaning they're isolated or outcasts. Conduct disorder was also described pretty simplistically and incorrectly. They focused on the aggression, and no participants were aware of the age limit for the diagnosis. And there was a lot of extreme examples like Jeffrey Dahmer, Ted Bundy, which reflects the stereotypes and the stigma for these disorders. And there was also an overestimation of the disorder prevalence due to the media influence. And then all participants agreed that media glamorizes and sensationalizes these disorders for profit. So then you ask the so what question. So the study showcases media is a major source of mental health information, whether it's accurate or not, and usually it's not accurate. So understanding the phenomenon can inform education interventions, awareness for the public, and potentially responsible media production. So my final reflection of the project, I had strengths and limitations. Most of my strengths were that I did everything manually to get richer data and get more familiarized with the data. Doing the interview was more in-depth, and I was able to ask follow-up questions. And being face-to-face and virtual, I was able to observe the emotional reactions as well, and then could base my follow-up questions on that. A limitation is obviously the small sample size. I only sampled 3 people, so it's not as generalizable. Ethical challenges, the informed consent, and avoiding potential distress. I addressed those by fully informing participants and emphasizing that participation was voluntary, and then having them sign an informed consent that addressed both of these issues. And then sound research design and study alignment. The design aligned with the research objectives. The manual coding ensured engagement with the data, which supports reliability. The consistency in question structure enhanced trustworthiness. And then the validity between the results I got from the interview and the survey showed me that my question and data was valid. And then lessons learned. My school counseling skills helped me a lot with the interview process, asking open-ended questions, using silence to get more data from my participants, and just being an active listener. And then, like I said previously, manually coding and transcribing deepened the understandings. And then the one thing I would have changed is changing the interview question order, because it really reaffirmed the importance of question order and participant context in this kind of research.